Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric and Chad here with Iraq Veteran 8888. Today, we've got another Gun Gripe episode for you, and this one's going to be a doozy. This one's called Line in the Sand. Things have changed a little bit over the last couple of years. We've done a few videos that were kind of similar to this one, but not quite in the vein of this one. So we are going to dive into it. I'd like to take a moment to thank our friends at Sonoran Desert Institute for supporting Gun Gripes. They've got some great gunsmithing programs. If you're wanting a career in firearms technology, they accept all different types of financial aid. So if you're a military veteran, you got your GI Bill and whatnot, you can definitely get that to work for you. Check them out. They got wonderful programs. They're great people. Excellent distance learning programs in the field of gunsmithing technology. So check them out, Sonoran Desert Institute. Okay, so we're going to dive into this particular video, and some of y'all might recall some of the previous gripes that we've done that are kind of similar, but the big question that I suppose we're posing here is, at what point do gun owners get fed up? The line in the sand these days has become almost just a series of goalposts that the opposition to gun rights, they just have the ability to move the goalposts in whatever direction they want to fit their exacting needs, whatever they're trying to accomplish. And there's a real danger in that, right? It's not just a line in the sand anymore. And the problem is even on the pro-gun side, you've got a lot of folks in the pro-gun world that are willing to compromise with the anti-gunners. They're willing to compromise with all of these people that are, passing these, or trying to pass these anti-gun laws and all this legislation. The danger in that is there is no compromise. That's the issue, right? A sacrifice means that, I give up something for you that I know benefits you, or a compromise would be that we give up something that mutually benefits each other. We might each be giving something a little ground that we're not happy with.
But you also get something out of it.
But we get something out of it. We come to a compromise. The problem is there is no compromising with these people. And the danger is, on the pro-gun side, is where people think, oh, well, we're going to reach across the aisle. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. We're going to try to reason with them. You can't reason with madness. And that's the danger, I suppose, when we look at this.
It is. I mean, when we look at the makeup of the Congress as a whole, okay, on a federal level, all right? We're not talking about states just yet, but on a federal level, you see a lot of newer, younger senators and representatives coming up, but a lot of them are from the major cities where lines have been redrawn and such, and they've got this progressive socialist mindset, and they're definitely left-leaning, so therefore most of the time they're anti-gun. As we discussed with other guests in previous videos, there are people that reach across the aisle. There are anti-gun Republicans out there. There are anti-gun independents. There are pro-gun Democrats. We see what's going on right now with some of the confirmation hearings and things like that for the director of the ATF. Right now we're still dealing with the Chipman ordeal, okay, at this very moment. But we have some senators that are leaning one way or the other, and we don't really know which way they're going to go. So anti-gun, pro-gun, I mean, it's kind of wishy-washy, who's who. But a lot of the older folks that are in the Congress, they have an old school mentality. They're not really in tune with new gun owners and new gun culture, okay? And that's one of the big things, too, with the coronavirus going on and such over the past year and a half. You've seen massive amounts of guns being sold. You've seen massive amounts of ammunition being consumed. You've seen lots of body armor and other survival implements and things like that. A lot of gardening, prepping. People are sick and tired of the system that we live in and where society's going, and they want to secure their own little piece, their own little circle. And people are more willing to go out on a limb and be a first-time gun buyer, okay? I've seen articles recently that say, most of the new gun purchases are being, or from, like, anti-gunners. They've been interviewed, and it's like, hey, yeah, I was anti-gun before, but I see everything that's going on. I need a gun to protect myself. So at what point do those people say, you know what? I voted for these people, and they're trying to take my guns away from me that I bought to protect myself because they're defunding the police. They're shutting down these police precincts in these crime-ridden areas, and the crime is just exploding. It's not a gun problem. It's a crime problem. We look at some of the things going on right now, okay, with the way that prosecutions go through and criminal prosecutions and such. All right, you have, just for example, all right, I'm not going to give names or anything, but you have individuals who are arrested for computer crimes that are doing more time for rapists and murderers and other violent criminals because of the way our justice system is so flawed, okay? And I would say the way the justice system works, but it really doesn't work, okay? It's very flawed. And a lot of lawyers, okay, out there take advantage of it for the defense of the criminals because it's a money-making machine. And also the jails are a money-maker. Okay, we've discussed this in the past too. But at
it's
what
an
point,
industry for sure.
It is. But at what point do all the new gun owners say, you know what, I'm tired of all this anti-gun nonsense and where our elected representatives are wanting to take us, and we're just going to completely ignore anything that comes down the pipeline? And then you have states' rights, okay? Yeah. So we have states that are sanctuary states now. We have counties and cities that are sanctuary counties for the 2A. And, okay, at what point do you draw the line where the sheriffs and the sheriffs of these counties and these deputies draw a line and say, federal agents cannot cross into this county line, otherwise you will be arrested if you try to come in here and enforce federal gun laws. But then the feds are going to say, we supersede you because this is federal law. And all this has been discussed in previous videos. We've talked about guns and drugs and federal law versus state laws and things. But
selective enforcement.
Yeah, but at what point do you say enough is enough? And at what point is it time to potentially take up arms against a tyrannical government? I mean, that's really the ultimate goal, or the ultimate meaning and reason for the Second Amendment is, the militia at hand, the citizenry being armed and being able to defend the Constitution and this republic against anyone, domestic, foreign, whatever the enemy is. And as we're seeing right now, the enemy is in the government. I mean, they are trying to, look, you have, I'm sorry to be so long-winded on this, but I've had a lot of thoughts about this whole process that's been going on lately. But I've started homeschooling our kids and stuff. I've taken them out of that indoctrination camp that is called public school and public education. We have too many government agents that want to control every aspect of your life, from your children's education. They want you to work yourself to death for pennies on the dollar. They want you to use the government subsidized medical system, right? Which is completely broken. Okay, we know that. They also want you to have vaccine passports and stuff in some places. Like, there's still talk of vaccine passports. Like, oh, well, there were representatives recently that I saw talking about it. If you don't get vaccinated, we're going to make your life miserable until you do. Like, you're going to be mandated to go get checked twice a week and be tested. You're going to have to go sit in long lines at the doctor to get this done unless you're vaccinated. So it will behoove you to get vaccinated so you don't have to, encounter all this trouble, and you can have your freedom back. What? Have your freedom back? What do you mean? So I think people are really getting fed up with all this socialist, communistic nonsense that is being spewed out by elected officials who are supposed to represent America and not a socialist or communistic regime. Just my 2 cents, but hey,
you're absolutely right. So that's a lot to take in. One thing I'll add is that, going to the line in the sand that we mentioned about redistricting, all right, redrawing the lines,
absolutely.
Right? So there are many forms of the line in the sand, and that line in the sand could be the moving of the district lines, right? So there are many different lines, both philosophical and sort of imaginary and literal lines. So I immediately thought of that when you mentioned that. So that's a great point, Chad. And the other thing that I would mention too is that the overwhelming idea politically is that in 2022, when we have our midterms, they're thinking that they're going to probably win back the House, the Republicans are, okay? Probably 8 or 9 seats that there's a pretty overwhelming consensus that they're going to swing back to Republican seats. So that'll put us in a better position. But I would warn everyone to not let that, get you complacent, because Chad said something else that resonated with me as well, is that just because someone has an R next to their name doesn't mean they're pro-gun, and doesn't mean they're going to vote yay for some pro-gun piece of legislation. One congressman that I have a lot of respect for is Thomas Massey. And one thing that Thomas says all the time, he's like, well, why don't we record the vote? Let's go on record. Let's record a vote on every matter at hand, right? Because not every congressman or congresswoman or senator is going to want to vote yay on every single piece of crap that's in a big pork-filled bill, right? We've discussed this in a couple of other videos, but here's the issue, is that if you don't record the vote and you don't know who's voting for what, how do you know where they really stand? Then the vote just becomes a party line vote. It becomes a bipartisan type of thing where, of course, they're not going to they're going to vote on party lines, and you're never going to know where they individually stand on all the issues at hand, right? And the issue is, look at when the Republican Party had control of the House, the Senate, and the presidency. And we said this all the time. We wanted all this pro-gun stuff to go through. Well, I guess it was Speaker Ryan was got a little bit of a cold feet and didn't want to send up stuff for a vote or to put things out for a vote. But the problem is, like, why not get in there and fight? Why not make your status known, right? So, like, if all of these Republicans are supposed to be pro-gun, this is a gun channel. Hey, we shoot guns here. We care about the Second Amendment primarily. Everything that we do in these videos is in the vein of the Second Amendment and the natural rights of self-preservation, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, all that good stuff, right? The people watching this channel, primarily, they want to use firearms to protect their livelihoods, their homes, their communities, etc., etc. So this is we're talking about this strictly in the vein of the Second Amendment, right? There are many other issues at hand that we're not going to talk about because it will make the video really long, and we're trying to focus on this one, like we're kind of a focus group here, right? So we're getting in on the Second Amendment. So if they're supposed to be pro-Second Amendment, then why not get on record on these particular things and vote for it, even if something may not make it through to the president's desk. And even if the president wouldn't sign it, it wouldn't matter. You would still be able to show, hey, I supported this, and that's part of your track record for re-election. You go to get re-elected and you say, hey, I'm pro-gun. Here's why. Here's the checklist of things that I voted yay to. The Hearing Protection Act, National Carry Reciprocity, Permitless Carry, constitutional carry. Okay, not carry reciprocity, nationwide constitutional carry. These are all bills that we wanted to push through. Two big ones for us were constitutional carry and the Hearing Protection Act.
Well, national reciprocity was the big bill that was kind of going down the line with the HPA.
Right.
And look, something with the HPA, though, what Paul Ryan did when he pulled it from consideration from the floor after Vegas, okay, this was a long time ago. But we worked very hard to get the HPA through committee, and it had some definite hurdles. But the liberal side of the aisle, okay, the left of the aisle, they can push things through and ram it through without any consent from the Republicans whatsoever, from the other side of the aisle, or without consent from the American people as a whole, like Obamacare, okay? I didn't want it. A lot of other people didn't want it because I lost my health insurance after that, okay? But the thing is, they can ram stuff through when they so choose, but why is it something awful for the Republicans to ram things through that would actually benefit society as a whole, okay, and gain back constitutional rights that are available for everyone? What Paul Ryan did by pulling the HPA and pulling other pieces of legislation was basically saying that criminals represent gun owners as a whole, and if there's bad guys using guns, then we can't put this through because there might make more bad guys.
The point that I was trying to make,
but sorry,
I didn't finish my point.
Sorry,
but it's okay. The point I was trying to make was that say that in 2022 we get this miniature red wave, even if it's just a tiny wave, but a red wave of sorts that swings a little more power towards the Republicans. Don't assume, the Republicans are in charge. I just don't have to worry about this. That we shouldn't, the Senate is still blue, the presidency is still blue, but hey, we've got a Republican-controlled House, so hey, checks and balances. That means that no anti-gun legislation is going to go through, right? Doesn't mean they're not going to try. The point is, don't assume that Republicans won't vote for gun bills, anti-gun bills, right? That's where we get hung up on this, right? There are anti-gun Republicans. There are Republicans that are rhinos, right? Republican in name only. So it goes the other way. There are dinos, Democrat in name only. And there are a few out there that come to mind. I mean, Joe Manchin right now, he's twiddling his thumbs about this whole Chipman thing. And the last time that I read into it, he was actually scheduling a meeting with David Chipman. He wanted to sit down and look him in the eye and ask him questions. And I think that's a pretty astute thing, right? Joe Manchin's old school, right? He's an old school Southern Democrat, which means he's not a Democrat, okay? So the thing is, there are a lot of things that Joe Manchin supports in his overall platform that I may not agree with, but he generally tries to see eye to eye with gun owners because, hey, you're talking about rural West Virginia. Everyone owns a gun. You're born with a gun in your hand in West Virginia, and he knows that. Remember, politicians care about getting elected, getting reelected, and continuing to get reelected. So he understands that firearms are a hot button subject with his voters. So even though he's a Democrat, he cares more about getting reelected than he cares about being a Democrat. And you have to remember that. Whether someone's a Republican or a Democrat is irrelevant. They care more about getting reelected and furthering their career than they do about the party. That's just a fact.
Yep.
Okay? So I do think, though, that it is a very, mature thing for Joe Manchin to go, hey, well, I'm not really decided yet. I want to talk to this guy for myself. I can respect that. I can respect that because, he at least owes it to his constituents to say, hey, I talked to the guy and this is what I came up with. And at least whatever decision he arrives at, he can't say that he just jumped on the party bandwagon. He can at least say that he got the facts first. Yeah. And let's face it, there's a lot of facts floating around about Chipman and all of the Giffords Foundation crap that, he's been involved. He's an anti-gun activist, right? So how could you really put an anti-gun activist in control of someone as incendiary as what the ATF could be, right? There's even a lot of folks within the ATF internally that are like, oh my God, oh Jesus, what's going on here? So that's just the point I wanted to make, is that just because someone has an R next to their name, don't assume that they're going to be pro-gun and vote yay on every pro-gun bill, but also don't assume just because they're in charge that you can sit back and drink your sweet tea and not worry about anti-gun legislation that gets pushed through.
One of the lines in the sand right now, okay, as we're speaking right now, this very moment, will be Chipman, and whether or not he's nominated or not, because you're basically putting an anti-gun activist at the head of the ATF, which is not supposed to be an anti-gun organization. They're supposed to be a prosecutorial organization. They're supposed to go after criminals, not go after constitutionally protected rights.
They're not supposed to create criminals out of thin air.
Not go after legal gun owners.
Right.
But they're trying to make every gun owner a criminal, and that's, like I said, the ultimate goal. So that's going to be one of the lines, okay, in the sand is going to be the Chipman confirmation, whichever way it goes. But at what point do people just as a whole, and we're not talking about gun owners, yes, but we're talking about Americans, okay? At what point do you just say enough is enough, and you know what, I'm just going to completely ignore government and all this regulation that encroaches upon my life and my freedom and my constitutional rights?
Sure.
What point do you just say enough is enough? Whether or not you're a gun owner or not, it doesn't have to be just 2A. It doesn't have to be just gun owners. It can be any freedom-loving person. But we see it all across the world, in third world countries, in first world countries that are socialistic or communistic in nature. People wave American flags. They want out. They want freedom. They want liberty. But their countries were not set up in such a way like ours. We are the great experiment, like we've said many times before. The United States is a melting pot of races and cultures, and we all try to mesh together. I mean, it literally is the great experiment, and don't know how long it's going to last. The way we're running right now, it's not going to last very long at all if we wind up under a socialist or communistic regime, because we see what happens to countries that accept that. We see what happened, or that's happening currently in Cuba. Okay, people want freedom, and we have a president who is so daft that he decides to say that, oh, they're protesting for COVID vaccinations. They're not protesting for liberty and freedom. They're waving American flags because they don't
care about
vaccination. They want food.
They want dinner.
They want food. They want medicine to help their families, okay, to cure their kids of random ailments that are just over-the-counter type things here. But when you live under that sort of regime, all those amenities of normal life here in the United States, what people strive to achieve, is not available there. That is why people want to come here. You don't see people from the U.S. wanting to go elsewhere. So where do you draw the line? I'm not drawing the line and saying, oh, well, I'm just going to flee my country and go somewhere else. There is nowhere else that I want to go.
America's it, y'all. Once America falls, that's
I'm
it.
done.
No, that's a great point. I mean, so when you look at the totality of the situation, all right, when it comes to, you mentioned all of these people in communist countries or whatever waving American flags, right? They understand the beacon of freedom even more than your Americans, right? And that's the problem, is you've got people that were born here and lucky enough to be born here. This is one of the greatest countries in the world, right? The United States is awesome. We have our flaws. We're not perfect. But as a whole, this nation is pretty freaking awesome. Yep. And it's full of really good people. And you can look at all that crap you hear on TV about, oh, these people hate these people, or these people are evil and bad and all of this. You can look at all that noise and that static, or you can just open your eyes and see what's in front of you. You can get out and see your country and see the people that are in it and visit them and see what they're all about. And I love the people in this country, right? Everyone is pretty freaking civil. I don't know about everywhere else, but where I'm at, like, everyone's awesome, right? And it doesn't matter. Everyone's just living their life, doing their thing, and having fun and living their life, right? So when you see these foreign countries waving American flags, they understand freedom even more than the people that are born here. They take it for granted because they're so fixated on this freaking thing or on the freaking laptop or TV. They've got their head in the screen so much that it just becomes this programming, like 1984. Yeah. It's literally the same type of thing. Like, they're being programmed. History's being rewritten right before us, just like George Orwell said. 1984 was not an instruction manual. It was a warning. Now, some would say that George Orwell's political views were probably more in line with socialism, Marxism, but whether he intended it as a warning or as an instruction guide is irrelevant. The takeaway is that it's not an instruction guide. It is a warning to what happens when unfiltered, unhindered government is given full reign over the people. And that's the danger. That's the line in the sand we talk about, right? That's why these people are so anti-gun. All of these politicians that want to take your rights away, take your ability to defend yourself. So what? They're going to defund the police, take the money away from the police and defund the police and tie the police's hands and lock them up in jail when they try to do their job to the best of their ability and all this stuff, right? But in the same token, disarm the citizens. So wait a minute. You're not talking about trying to catch the criminals and lock them up. Or you're not trying to, do all that. You want to let the criminals run rampant, defund the police, and disarm the citizenry in the same stroke. So what? Are we talking about a den of thieves here? Are we talking about a nation that's ran by thieves? Because that's what you're telling me, right? When honest, good, hardworking people can't be armed, they want to, have all this crazy laws they're going to try to pass against you to make it harder for you to protect yourself, but then they're taking away the police, right? It's just crazy. And all this anti-police stuff. I mean, I'm on a couple of different thought processes here when it comes to this thing. And I don't want to dive into this subject too much. This is probably a whole other video in of itself. But I'll just quickly say, right, that you judge people by their actions, right? Just like you wouldn't want to be judged by, you're Jew or Christian or white or black or whatever, really different detractor, right? You don't want to be judged for those things, right? Well, it's the same thing. Like a policeman, you're going to judge them by what they do and the effect that they have on their community and what kind of person they are and their character, right? So, I'm not blindly anti or pro cop, just like I'm not blindly anti or pro any other, race or religion or any other type of contributing factor to someone's overall, holistic personality. I am just simply a judge of character, no matter who that is. It doesn't matter if it's a policeman or whoever, whatever person, right? I'm not going to blindly hate or like that person. I'm gonna carefully observe their behavior, and I'm going to use my logic and sense and instincts to determine if that person is worthy of my admiration, respect, and that's just how I do things, right? But I also think that it is a very American trait to give respect and expect it in return. So, just like I wouldn't want someone being disrespectful and giving me a hard time, I'm going to kill everyone with kindness around me, and I'm going to give them the opportunity to return that favor to me, right? So just because I expect people to treat me with respect doesn't mean that I'm not going to give respect blindly and easily. And I'm going to obviously be really awesome and kind to everyone around me. And then the minute that they betray that and show me that they're not capable of it, well, then we can cross that bridge when we get there. But that's how you treat every person in every situation, regardless, right? You don't let your guard down. That's the point I'm trying to make, right? I think that people tend to forget that.
All right, so let's recap. All right, so line in the sand, right? All right, so I think the first most civil way of drawing a line in the sand is making sure that your elected representatives, making sure that your government, local, city government, county government, state government, on up to the federal level, knows where you stand on the issues that are important to you. Okay? That's the first thing. People need to get out there and go to city council meetings more. They need to be abreast of local politics, especially because that's the most direct line of, effect on your life is your local municipality. Not what comes down from Capitol Hill, but what happens up at City Hall. Yeah. All right? People don't really understand that. They don't go to city council meetings. They don't know their elected reps, okay, in their district anymore. But let yourself be known where you stand, okay? And the next step is to make sure that you are fully prepared for anything that might come afterwards. Let's just put it that way.
I think that peaceful noncompliance is certainly one of the axioms to consider here, right?
Absolutely.
We've made this comparison before. The prohibition of our time is the Second Amendment, okay? When you look at prohibition, I won't get into it, but briefly, right? They banned alcohol. That's what prohibition is, okay? And this suffrage movement, when it came to all of this, not suffrage, but this anti-alcohol movement, right? That's a different thing. But this that's a whole other bag of apples. Although very valid. That I didn't mean to get into that, but the anti-alcohol movement, right, came from a bunch of people that caused to stink, right? And it started on that local level, going to their local meetings, holding up signs. It was all of that sort of thing. But anyway, they tried to ban alcohol. So
religion versus state, and everything like that.
So there was this huge campaign to try and ban alcohol. So of course, what did that create? An illicit and an underground environment. People were making speakeasies, and moonshine, and speakeasies, and hidden bars, and all of this stuff. Well, what society was showing was that we want to drink. We don't want
and not
someone to tell us what to do.
And we're going to, whether you say we can't or not.
Correct. So what happened is over time, these federal agents and these local law enforcement officers and sheriffs and things like that, they went to work one day and they probably were thinking, well, by George, we went and got tore up at the speakeasy last night. And I just don't think it's right to go in the day. We put on this uniform and we go and we bust these speakeasies, and at night we're getting drunk. Like, that's a double standard. And after a while, they're like, we have to change this law because people just aren't complying. Like, now there's people drinking in the street. They don't even care that we're walking by and see them drinking. So that's what it takes. Yeah. You have to show that society is fed up with it and that we're going to do it anyway. And that's the same reason that a lot of states have changed their view on things like cannabis, right, and other substances, because so many people have said, screw you, we're just going to do it anyway, that now they're like, well, what are we going to do, arrest everyone? So when they get to the point where they decide, well, heck, what are we going to do, arrest everyone? It's kind of a moot point. Gun control becomes a moot point, and it becomes one of those things where they're going to have to look for the next boogeyman. They're going to have to move on to the next thing that they're going to come up with to demonize and to criminalize, to make you a criminal out of. And then the Second Amendment will get left alone, just like now, people can drink or whatever. So I guess the point is that peaceful noncompliance is a crucial aspect to that, to recap.
It is. So, that's the next step, is the peaceful noncompliance, and after that, that's when, But
be prepared for anything, good or bad.
Good or bad.
Right? Hope for the best. Hope for the best and prepare for the worst. And that if you always do that in life, even when things aren't going chipper in the political realm, you'll never be disappointed because you'll always be ready for the worst thing.
We've seen like armed shows of force, in other situations in recent memory. Bundy Ranch. I mean, that was an armed show of force, and federal authorities backed down, and it just was never spoken of again, pretty much. But
you notice everyone let it go. They were like, "Oh, you don't want to go
this
there."
Is probably not something that we want to get involved with, because I mean, they literally, if there was a shot fired, they could have probably broke out a new civil war. I mean, it was that serious.
It would have been ugly.
It would have been very ugly. And people think that in modern society something like that can't happen, but we see it happening in so-called modern societies all around the world all the time. And we see the influence of countries like China, like the CCP. Bleeding into American culture, which it has no place here. There's just a lot of little things that kind of make up the whole when you start thinking about these situations that are going on, and just the cultural shifts and the mentality of politics as a whole. And I think we're in one of those tipping points. We're either going to tip one way or the other. We're either going to tip back towards freedom and liberty and common sense, or we're going to tip towards the totalitarianism that we're seeing, throughout this whole COVID pandemic.
What we came here to escape from.
Yes. So we don't want to see a repeat, of all the tyranny that, the crown put upon American citizens back in the day, or, colonists back in the day before they were declared American citizens by some very smart men. But anyways, that's pretty much the point and of this gripe. Baby steps, okay, with things. And like Eric mentioned, your elected representatives, make sure that things get voted on, and make sure you hold their feet to the fire to make sure that those votes go the way that they promised. Too many politicians don't keep their campaign promises. They'll say what they want to say or what you want to hear, and they'll kiss babies. They'll do anything they can to get elected because they want that job, they want that power, they want that position. But then, in order to keep that position, they have to do the job correctly and with their constituents' approval. Okay, because without their constituents and without doing the job properly, as was promised, then they're not going to have a job at that point. And I mean, it's not much of a job. We see what's going on in Texas. We've got lawmakers, Democrat lawmakers, leaving Texas, fleeing, to avoid voting on a voting rights bill out there. And the governor has already said that when they come back, they're going to arrest them. Which they may have already been arrested and thrown in jail or something by then. But who knows what's going to happen with that kind of stuff. But it's just crazy, some of the things that are going on.
An idea so crazy that it's never even been done before. It's the first time it's ever happened because no decent person would ever think, well, we got to get this to the floor for a vote. Here's when we're supposed to be here. I'm leaving. I'm just not going to show up. Who does that?
They had to leave the state because there's a law in Texas that says if they're not in assembly for that vote, they could be arrested and brought there and forced to vote.
So they're doing it to protest. But they're actually, it could be considered obstruction of justice.
In a certain degree. But anyways.
So guys, thanks so much for tuning in for today's Gun Gripe. We hope you enjoyed it. Our thought here is always to open up our hearts and minds, right? We want people to open up their minds a bit and think a little bit. Expand your mind a bit and think about things from a little bit wider perspective. Open yourself up to new experiences. Open yourself up to different perspectives.
Don't be so one-sided.
It helps you kind of get a bit of an idea for what's really going on when you try to fairly and from a balanced way, try to see where each side is coming from, right? If I'm a mediator, for instance, right, I can't possibly solve either party's problem as mediator if I don't understand each party's problem. So I think that's the best way to have a good balanced look at everything. So guys, have a great day. We really appreciate it. If you wish to support the channel directly, one of the ways you can do so, go pick you up a t-shirt over on Ballistic Ink. We got some really great ones for sale right now. We hope you'll enjoy those. Some real racy shirts, but really cool stuff. Okay, and we've also, our Patreon supporters, thank you guys so much for supporting our efforts. We've got many more videos on the way. We hope you'll see you soon. Have a good one.
See you guys.